The name of the game is boxing. The name of the game is not slugging, because when the fight game is over, when boxing is all over, and you hang it up like me.
With the fact that, this dude bring thousands of fans.
It's a power move, but I mean, Tank still got that name.
Today's topic is one that has the internet buzzing and fans debating on every platform possible. Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis. Some are saying it is the biggest circus event boxing has ever seen, while others believe it could actually be bigger than a mega fight like Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford. The very idea that Jake Paul, a YouTuber turned fighter, could command that kind of attention alongside a superstar like Tank Davis has made this one of the most polarizing discussions in combat sports right now. Now, before we dive deep into this breakdown, where we will be analyzing comments from Floyd Mayweather, Rolly Romero, respected trainers, and interviewers who all shared their insights, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like if you love boxing content, and comment down below what you honestly think. Is Jake Paul versus Tank Davis bigger than Canelo versus Crawford? We want to hear your voice, because this conversation is just getting started. Floyd Mayweather opened this entire discussion with a very simple but powerful reminder. He stated that boxing is not about slugging. It is about skill, strategy, and protecting yourself so that when the lights turn off and the career ends, you can still walk away with your faculties intact. He emphasized that when the fight game is over, the thing that really matters is your health and your ability to live a normal life beyond the ring. This perspective set the stage perfectly for a fight like Jake Paul versus Tank Davis, because it separates entertainment value from the purity of boxing. Floyd is essentially telling fighters and fans alike that while knockouts and brawls may bring crowds in, the essence of boxing has always been about discipline, technique, and defense. When you apply Floyd's philosophy to Jake Paul versus Tank Davis, the picture becomes more interesting. Jake Paul is still learning what it means to be a pure boxer. He relies heavily on size, strength, and raw power, but his technique is not on the level of elite fighters. Tank Davis, on the other hand, embodies what Floyd is talking about. Tank is not just a knockout artist. He is a defensive mastermind who knows how to set traps, move his head, and avoid unnecessary punishment. Floyd's reminder about the importance of boxing and not slugging is a subtle warning. If Jake Paul comes into this fight trying to slug with Tank, he will play directly into Tank's strength, because while Jake may have size, Tank has mastered the art of hitting without getting hit. Floyd's perspective is crucial because it grounds the conversation in boxing fundamental, which could be the deciding factor in whether this fight is a spectacle or a competitive showdown.
The name of the game is boxing. The name of the game is not slugging, because when the fight game is over, when boxing is all over, and you hang it up like me.
Floyd went even deeper with his second statement, pointing out that nothing in boxing is more valuable than your health. He said that even above money, what matters most is the ability to think clearly and live well after retirement. He framed boxing as a game of hitting without being hit, which again reflects the science of the sport. In the context of Jake Paul versus Tank Davis, this is especially relevant because Jake represents the new school of fighters who often treat boxing as a business opportunity first and a sport second. His rise has been fueled by pay-per-view buys, controversy, and social media promotion. Tank Davis, however, represents the old-school philosophy where skill, defense, and health are prioritized. Floyd's words serve as a cautionary tale that while the money may be massive for Jake Paul, the reality of stepping in with someone like Tank is dangerous. What Floyd indirectly highlighted here is the contrast between fighters who chase legacy and fighters who chase attention. For Jake Paul, this fight is about proving that he belongs among legitimate fighters and showing the world he can draw numbers bigger than anyone else. But Floyd reminds us that once the cameras are gone, Jake will have to live with the physical consequences of the choices he makes. Tank Davis has already mastered the art of defense, which means he is less likely to take damage in a fight like Jake, still green in his craft, is more vulnerable to punishment. Floyd's perspective gives us a sobering lens through which to view this fight. The glitz and the money might make it seem like a fun spectacle, but the reality is that health and safety are always on the line in boxing.
You still want to be able to have your faculties. You still want to be able to have your brain. That's more important than anything. Fuck the money. Your health is more important than anything. The name of the game is to hit and not get hit.
The Fight Hype interviewer added fuel to the fire by pointing out the attributes that make Tank Davis such a dangerous opponent for Jake Paul. He highlighted Tank's superior footwork, his speed, and his ability to move laterally with precision. He questioned whether Jake Paul, even with his size and power, could truly handle someone as quick and technically polished as Tank Davis. This is where the stylistic matchup becomes fascinating. Jake Paul is accustomed to fighting opponents who are slower, older, or simply less refined in their boxing technique. Facing Tank Davis is an entirely different challenge. punch. The interviewer's comments strike at the heart of why fans are split. On one hand, Jake Paul has the physical advantages. He is bigger, stronger, and naturally heavier. On the other hand, Tank Davis possesses the kind of speed and agility that has troubled fighters his own size, let alone someone who has never faced that level of skill before. The idea that Tank can dart in and out, land his shots, and escape before Jake can react raises serious doubts about how competitive this fight will be. What makes this interesting is that fans are not simply asking if Jake can take Tank's power. They are asking if Jake can even touch him in the first place. The interviewer was not just analyzing skill. He was raising the exact concern that every boxing purist has. Can Jake Paul's raw power overcome the technical mastery of one of the most skilled fighters in the sport today?
Tank's a lot faster. He's got a lot better footwork. I mean, can this guy really take a Tank Davis? I know he's got the size.
The discussion then shifted to an even sharper critique of Jake Paul's chances when the Fight Hype interviewer emphasized that Tank Davis has better footwork, faster hands, and superior lateral movement compared to Jake. In boxing, those attributes often decide fights more than size or raw strength. Speed kills, and Tank Davis has speed in abundance. What makes this analysis even more compelling is that Rolly Romero immediately jumped in and reminded everyone that Tank Davis is not just a great fighter. He is an all-time legend in the making. Rolly's statement elevated the conversation by framing this fight as more than just a novelty or exhibition. He essentially said, "We are talking about one of the best to ever do it, even if Tank's prime is still ongoing." This combination of perspectives paints Jake Paul as someone walking into the lion's den. On paper, Jake has physical tools, but against an opponent who moves better, reacts faster, and thinks quicker, those tools may not matter. Rolly's point about Tank being a legend only underscores how dangerous this fight truly is. Legends are built not just on wins, but on their ability to dominate every style they face. For Jake Paul to enter that arena with Tank Davis is to step into history itself. The conversation between the interviewer and Rolly reflects both skepticism and respect. Skepticism toward Jake's chances, and respect toward Tank's undeniable greatness. This duality is why fans are glued to the idea. It is not just a question of whether Jake can survive. It is a question of whether he can even belong in the same ring with a fighter of Tank Davis's caliber.
I think it's going to be tough for Jake because the guy's got, better footwork, better lateral movement, faster hands. What do you think?
Bro, dude, we're talking about an all-time legend.
When Rolly Romero brought up the comparison of Jake Paul versus Tank Davis as a modern-day David and Goliath battle, he perfectly captured the essence of this matchup. On one side, you have Jake Paul, the larger-than-life figure who brings size, strength, and celebrity spectacle to the ring. On the other, you have Gervonta, Tank Davis, a smaller man in physical stature but a fighter with the kind of destructive power that makes giants crumble. This is what makes the fight so intriguing. People love an underdog story, and here the roles are reversed. Despite Jake Paul being bigger, it is Tank who holds the aura of a true giant in the sport. Romero's saying, "We'll see what happens," adds to the mystique because he knows boxing is not fought on paper. Weight and size are only part of the equation, and Tank has made a career out of proving that raw talent and skill can slice through brute force like a hot knife through butter. Then, when the Fight Hype interviewer asked why Tank seems to be taking all the brunt of the negative press leading up to this fight, Romero did not hesitate to cut straight to the truth. "Envy," he said, "because they envy him." And he is right. Tank Davis has the spotlight. He has the resume. He has the pay-per-view numbers. And now he is the one daring enough to step into the circus world of Jake Paul. The critics are not genuinely concerned about Tank's legacy. What they feel is jealousy that a man of his size and background can command so much power, influence, and attention. They envy that he is in the position to make the biggest money fight of the year, while others are still struggling for scraps. The David and Goliath comparison is not just about size. It is about perception. Jake Paul represents the Goliath of modern celebrity culture, where hype, size, and marketing create the illusion of invincibility. Tank Davis represents David, the man with the stone in his sling, the fighter with the talent and precision to strike down giants. The envy Romero points out only fuels the fire. People want to see Tank fail not because they doubt his ability, but because they cannot stand the idea of a smaller man continuing to dominate a sport built around size. In reality, the envy is proof that Tank already lives rent-free in the minds of his critics. That is why Romero's comments hit so hard. This is not just about a fight. It is about a man who has become so powerful that even when the odds seem stacked against him, people are desperate to see him fall.
We're talking about right now. The bird seems what was it, David and Goliath?
Yeah. Hey, listen, why do you think Gervonta's taking the brunt of all the bad?
Because they envy him.
Yeah, man.
When the interviewer asked whether the bigger event would be Crawford versus Canelo or Jake Paul versus Tank Davis, he touched on one of the hottest debates in combat sports today. Rolly Romero did not flinch. He said Jake Paul and Tank would bring a way bigger audience. That statement may shock purists, but it is absolutely true. Crawford versus Canelo is a fight for the boxing elite, the hardcore fanbase that follows technical brilliance and legacy-building showdown. But Jake Paul versus Tank Davis is something else entirely. It is crossover entertainment. It is spectacle. It is the blending of traditional boxing with the viral world of YouTube celebrity and cultural phenomenon. And in today's world, spectacle sells more than skill. Romero's response reflects a hard reality that traditionalists hate to admit. People no longer tune in just for belts or pound-for-pound debates. They tune in for drama, personalities, and stories that transcend the sport. Jake Paul brings millions of followers who have never watched a boxing match in their lives. Tank Davis brings knockout power and credibility that make the event feel legitimate. Together, they are a recipe for a pay-per-view monster. When the interviewer agreed and said he thought the same, it showed that even the media recognizes where the money is. Crawford versus Canelo might satisfy the purists, but Jake Paul versus Tank will dominate headlines, trend on every social media platform, and capture the attention of casual fans who would otherwise ignore boxing. It is a fight that people will talk about in barber shops, in classrooms, in offices, and on street corners, not just among hardcore boxing fans. The bigger event is not always about the better fight. It is about cultural relevance, and Jake Paul versus Tank Davis has it in spades. Think about it. A YouTube star turned boxer fighting a pound-for-pound knockout artist who is giving up serious size. That narrative writes itself. It is a story of audacity, of spectacle, and of what happens when two worlds collide. That is why Romero is right. This fight will eclipse everything else. It is not just boxing. It is an event. And in today's era, events will always outsell purist battles.
Man, what's going to be the bigger event? Crawford, Canelo, or, Jake Paul and Tank?
Jake Paul and Tank will see way more audience.
I think so.
When Rolly Romero said that the Mexican fanbase would not show up for the Tank fight, he was making a point about how different audiences are shaping the sport. Jake Paul and Tank Davis will not rely on traditional fanbase. They are building something entirely new. Mexican fans have historically carried boxing, filling arenas for legends like Julio Cesar Chavez, Canelo Alvarez, and Juan Manuel Marquez. But Tank Davis versus Jake Paul appeals to a completely different demographic. It is about youth, about viral culture, and about a global audience that does not need to be tied to one nationality or tradition. Rolly is saying the Mexican base will stay with Canelo, and he is right, but that does not matter. Jake Paul versus Tank does not need them. Their audience will come from everywhere else, from TikTok to Instagram to YouTube. It will be kids, young adults, and casuals who have never once cared about Mexican boxing tradition. It will be a new wave of fans that may not even know the sweet science but understand spectacle. This is a cultural reset. Then you have Coach Hunter saying Jake Paul is a young guy moving up the ladder fast. That is crucial because it speaks to Jake's unique rise. He has skipped the traditional system, bypassed the Olympic route, and ignored the amateur circuit. Instead, he built his career in front of millions on social media and then tested himself against real fighters step by step. Whether people like him or not, his growth cannot be denied. He is moving up fast because he is smart, calculated, and willing to take risks others would not. So when Rolly dismisses the Mexican fanbase as irrelevant to this fight, and Coach Hunter highlights Jake's rapid progression, the picture becomes clear. Jake Paul versus Tank Davis is not about the old boxing guard. It is not about tradition. It is about evolution. It is about creating a fight that belongs to the modern era, one that speaks to audiences who are not confined by heritage or national loyalty. This fight is not for the Mexican base, the Puerto Rican base, or the hardcore base. It is for everyone, everywhere, and that is why it will explode. Tank brings credibility, Jake brings spectacle, and together they bring the kind of crossover appeal that breaks barriers. This is not a traditional fight. This is the fight of the future.
For an audience, I guarantee you, none of the Mexican fan base will go watch the Tank fight.
They're young guys, they're moving up the ladder pretty fast,
When the Fight Hype interviewer pointed out that people have mixed feelings about a potential clash between Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis, he tapped into the raw confusion and division surrounding this spectacle. On one side, you have diehard boxing purists who look at this matchup and immediately roll their eyes. They see Tank Davis as one of the most devastating knockout artists of this generation, a man who has proven himself time and time again inside the ring against legitimate champions. To them, putting Tank against Jake Paul, who only a few years ago was recording YouTube videos and doing skits instead of sparring world-class fighters, feels like a circus act. It feels like boxing being cheapened, watered down, and repackaged as some kind of crossover event to appeal to the masses who are more interested in social media drama than the sweet science itself. But then there is the other side. There is the crowd that thrives on the entertainment spectacle, the ones who love the wild unpredictability that Jake Paul brings to the fight game. They point out that boxing needs eyeballs. They argue that Jake Paul, love him or hate him, is putting more people in front of a boxing match than many champions ever could. To them, a fight between Tank Davis and Jake Paul is not just about legitimacy. It is about drawing in the casual fans who would otherwise never tune into a card. They see Jake Paul as a disruptor who forces the old guard to step outside of its tradition and embrace the fact that the sport is entertainment as much as it is competition. And this is why the interviewer's comment hits so hard. Mixed feelings are exactly what Jake Paul generates, and that is his power. He has split the boxing world down the middle. Some scoff at him, others support him, but either way, they are talking about. That is why a fight against Tank Davis, even with all its absurdity, cannot be dismissed, because while purists may laugh it off, casuals will buy it, and when casuals buy it, the fight becomes big. The same thing happened with Floyd Mayweather's exhibition. Fans ridiculed them, but the numbers spoke louder than the critics. Jake Paul has mastered that same formula. At the end of the day, whether you are rolling your eyes or rushing to the pay-per-view link, you cannot ignore that this fight has people buzzing, and that is the ultimate mark of relevance. Jake Paul thrives in this chaotic energy, and Tank Davis, by agreeing to even entertain it, has now been pulled into the storm. The mixed feelings are not a weakness. They are the very fuel that will drive this fight to the spotlight.
And Gervonta, Tank Davis, I know that a lot of people have mixed feelings. People are like, who cares? It's an exhibition, right? It's just a fight between two guys where, you know, Floyd's done it.
Coach Hunter admitted he is a Gervonta Davis fan, but his statement revealed something deeper. Even as a fan of Tank, he could not help but draw on history when considering this bizarre matchup, by saying he remembered many moons ago watching Muhammad Ali step into an exhibition against a Japanese wrestler. Hunter highlighted that what we are seeing with Jake Paul is not entirely new. Boxing and combat sports have always flirted with spectacle, with crossover events that stretch the limits of believability. The difference is that now, with social media amplifying everything, these spectacles have become global cultural moments. Ali stepping into the ring against Antonio Inoki in 1976 was ridiculed at the time. Critics laughed at it. Purists complained that it cheapened boxing. But years later, it is remembered as one of the most fascinating spectacles in sports history. It was not about pure competition. It was about entertainment. It was about bringing different worlds together, and it left people talking for decades. Hunter's comment reminds us that while the name and circumstances are different, the spirit of the Tank Davis versus Jake Paul match follows that same tradition. For Tank fans, this fight may feel insulting. They do not want to see one of the most lethal fighters alive sharing the ring with a YouTuber. But for Jake fans, it is validation. It is the proof that he has risen high enough to even get mentioned in the same breath as elite fighters. Whether or not he belongs there is irrelevant to them. The fact that it is happening is the victory in itself.
I'm a Gervonta fan, you already know. So, and like you brought that up because I remember many moons ago watching Ali exhibition like that against a Japanese wrestler, I believe it was. It was entertainment, it was an exhibition, you know, crowd seemed to get a kick out.
Hunter's comparison to Ali's exhibition puts Jake Paul's rise into a historical frame. Boxing has always needed moments that captured attention beyond just rankings and belts. The purists can scream all they want, but history has shown that the spectacle fights often leave the longest lasting memory. Jake Paul versus Tank Davis may not define either man's legacy inside the ring, but it will define an era where boxing collides with pop culture in ways that cannot be undone. And just like Ali's strange exhibition decades ago, this fight will be remembered whether people want it to or not. Coach Hunter's next point strikes at the core of the dilemma. He said that as a boxing fan, you want to see real fights. That statement echoes the frustration of millions who watch Tank Davis in his prime and wonder why his time is being spent on exhibitions against social media influencers rather than chasing legacy-defining matchups. Fans want to see Tank against Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, or Teofimo Lopez. They want to see the fights that push him to his limits and define his greatness. That is what the purist side of the sport sport crave. They do not want sideshow entertainment. They want the real thing. But then Hunter balances that sentiment by admitting that at the end of the day, this is entertainment. He does not dismiss Jake Paul because, whether you love him or hate him, Jake has proven one thing: he brings attention. Boxing as a sport is not thriving the way it used to. It is fragmented, with different promoters, different networks, and too many belts confusing casual fans. In that chaos, Jake Paul has forced himself into relevance. He makes people care, even if that care comes in the form of anger or ridicule. Hunter's statement reflects the uncomfortable truth that entertainment often outweighs sporting merit in today's world. Jake Paul knows how to push, but he knows how to market himself. And while Tank Davis may be the fighter with the real skill, Jake is the one who makes people pay attention. Together, they represent the new formula of boxing in this modern age. You need the skill of Tank, but you also need the noise of Jake. That is why this fight, even if labeled an exhibition, has such gravity. It combines credibility with chaos, skill with spectacle, tradition with disruption. Hunter's words remind us that boxing has always been caught between sport and entertainment. Sometimes those two align perfectly, creating legendary fights that satisfy both purists and casual. Other times, they clash, creating oddities that frustrate one side while thrilling the other. Tank Davis versus Jake Paul falls into the latter category, and Hunter acknowledges that without dismissing it, because in the end, boxing is not just about belts and ranking. It is about moments that people will remember. And whether this fight is respected or ridiculed, people will never forget that Tank Davis, the knockout king, once shared the ring with Jake Paul, the disruptor who refuses to be ignored.
Man, you want to see, real fights or what have you. There's entertainment. Jake Paul, love him, hate him, or whatever you want to do.
Coach Hunter hit the nail on the head because when it comes to Jake Paul, no matter what people feel about his skill set, his technique, or his so-called legitimacy as a fighter, one thing cannot be denied: he brings an army of fans every time he laces up the glove. This is not speculation. It is cold, hard reality. When Jake Paul fights, people tune in. They pay for the tickets. They buy the pay-per-view. They flood arenas. They make noise online. And that is why he continues to get these massive opportunities. Boxing has always been a sport about talent, but it has also always been about drawing power. From Muhammad Ali to Mike Tyson to Floyd Mayweather, every superstar had one thing in common: they could put people in the seats. That is exactly what Jake Paul does, and Coach Hunter is right to point it out. What critics overlook is that boxing is not simply about who is the best fighter. If that were the case, countless elite boxers who are technically superior but commercially invisible would be headlining every major card. The sport does not work that way. It thrives on energy, on spectacle, and on fan investment. Jake Paul provides all three. That is why he gets these chances to face fighters like Tank Davis, because Jake does not just show up to fight, he brings a movement with him. He taps into an audience that traditional boxing often struggles to reach, particularly the younger generation who may not care about the intricacies of footwork or defensive posture, but who care about excitement, personality, and moments they can talk about on social media. You cannot argue with the fact that Jake Paul is a magnet for attention. Whether fans tune in hoping he wins or desperately wanting him to get knocked out, the result is the same. They are watching. They are paying. They are driving the business of boxing forward, and that is what makes him powerful in negotiation. That is what makes fighters like Tank Davis willing to step into the ring with him despite the unusual weight gap and the circus-like atmosphere. Coach Hunter recognized this fundamental truth. Jake Paul has positioned himself as one of the sport's biggest attractions, and attraction is currency. Whether you respect his journey or not, his ability to mobilize thousands of fans gives him leverage that cannot be ignored.
With the fact that, this dude bring thousands of fans.
It's a power move, but I mean, Tank still got that name.
Coach Boog laid it out plainly when he called Jake Paul's decision to fight Tank Davis a power move. That is exactly what it is. Jake Paul thrives on shock value, on making headlines, on doing things that other fighters would never even consider. Taking on a smaller but deadly skilled fighter like Gervonta, Tank Davis is a calculated risk. On one hand, Jake has the massive size advantage. On the other, Tank has devastating knockout power and world-class experience against real champions. The move itself sends a clear message. Jake is not afraid to step into chaos. He is not afraid of criticism. He is not afraid of ridicule. He wants to shake the boxing world, and nothing shakes it more than calling out one of the most feared names in the sport. But Coach Boo balanced his statement by acknowledging that Tank still carries that name. And he is right. Tank Davis is not just another opponent. He is a household name in the boxing world. He is a fighter who has destroyed world champions, sold out arenas, and created highlight reels that will live on for decades. When you attach Tank Davis to into any fight, the credibility skyrockets. So, while Jake Paul may be making a power move, it is only made possible because Tank still holds that aura of legitimacy. Without Tank's name, this fight does not have the same effect. The risk, the intrigue, and the danger all come from Tank's presence in the ring. This is why Coach Boog's observation is critical. Jake Paul might be controlling the narrative with his bravado and business moves, but Tank is the anchor that gives the entire fight weight. Fans are not just watching because Jake Paul is involved. They are watching because Jake Paul is daring to test himself against a proven killer, and that makes it different from any of his other fights. This is no exhibition against a washed MMA veteran or a faded boxer. This is Tank Davis, a man who has built his name through knockouts, titles, and dominance. The clash is not simply entertainment. It is danger meeting ambition, and that is why this fight feels so explosive. At its core, this fight is the ultimate gamble. Jake Paul is betting that his power move will not backfire, while Tank is betting that his name, his skill, and his ferocity will humble the YouTube star turned boxer once and for all. Coach Boog's statement captures this balance perfectly. Yes, Jake is making a bold move, but it only works because Tank Davis brings the kind of name that turns this spectacle into a must-watch event.
What he want to do, he can do it, man. I feel like he paid his dues in the game, so.
Damn right, he got time. He's still young enough to go ahead on and, put on those fights that the boxing fans, including myself, want to see.
At the end of the day, the looming fight between Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis is not just about weight classes or record. It is about spectacle versus substance, ambition versus legitimacy, hype versus legacy. Coach Hunter reminded everyone that Jake Paul brings undeniable star power, the kind of magnetism that pulls thousands of fans into the arena and millions more to their screen. That cannot be dismissed. Without Jake's ability to move the needle, this fight does not happen. Yet Coach Boog rightly emphasized that none of it means anything without Tank's name. Tank Davis provides the credibility, the fear, and the danger that transforms this matchup from a circus act into a legitimate showdown. This fight is bigger than just two men stepping into the ring. It is a test of whether boxing's new wave of celebrity fighters can truly hang with the sport's most feared champion. It is a test of whether the business of boxing will continue to prioritize spectacle over tradition. And most importantly, it is a reminder that in boxing, both fame and skill matter. Jake Paul has the fame. Tank Davis has the skill. When those two collide, the world will be watching. And whether Jake Paul shocks the world or Tank Davis delivers the brutal lesson everyone expects, this fight will carve its place in history as one of the boldest power moves boxing has ever seen.